Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, Principal Atmospheric Scientist at Nutrient Ag Solutions, and I want to thank you for watching this weekly Ag Weather Update brought to you by the Farm Credit Associations of North Carolina. Well, at the end of last week, NOAA released its newest statistical analysis of 2020. So these are the statewide precipitation ranks. Now, we have 126 years in the data set. What you can see here is that North Carolina had its second wettest. Now, I went back and I'm like, well, how recent was that? Because I remember some very recent wet years. And you only have to go back right here to 2018, which was the wettest on record. And of course, we do know the influence of the tropical systems of that year across parts of North Carolina. Overall, just to let you know something, when you look back over that 126-year data set, we do have a positive trend in our annual precipitation to the tune of about 0.13 inches per decade, as you can see here from the NOAA data set. So it's at least some good statistical information to keep in the back of our minds. Now, when we look at temperatures, I'm going to show you two different maps. On the left, that's average temperature. You can see we're 124 out of 126. But where we had our greatest warmth was in the overnight, or the minimum temperatures here, having the warmest. In fact, look at the whole of the mid-Atlantic down through the Carolinas, even back over to Alabama, having their warmest minimum temperatures for a whole year. Now, when I go back to these statistics, the reason why I do that is to frame the upcoming long-range forecast. So that's the other new piece that's in here. First, some verification. Now, when I do long-range forecasting, I often give you two different sets of model data. One is called the weeklies. So the European model will run a 46-day forecast twice a week. It does it on a Monday night and again on Thursday. So you get them on Tuesday and Friday. And what you've got here was the forecast for the month of December using those weeklies. Now, what we have to do with these maps is look for patterns. So you see that the forecast was drier here, and it was also drier in the lower Mississippi River Valley. That was what it was picking up on. Now, how did it do? Well, the verification is over here on the left. That would show you from the CPC rain gauge data how it did. You can see that for the West Coast did pretty well, and you notice that overall in this region there's a drier bias. But a couple of big systems, like the one that came up here into parts of Louisiana and Arkansas, and then the big nor'easters that kind of came cranking here, well, the long-range ECMW of weeklies can't forecast that. They're not designed to forecast that. So we have to just step back and say, based upon what we know the model can do, did it do a good job? And overall, we'd have to say yes. But temperature-wise, it tends to do much better. Now again, the forecast for December is over here on the right, and we're looking for patterns, not the magnitude, but the patterns. And you can see that it was forecast to be near normal to cooler than normal across the southeast, cooler than normal across the Intermountain West. And what happened is over here on the left, and we see that overall it did a pretty good job of that, even picking up on the warmer pattern here. But again, we just look at it for patterns, not for actual values or magnitudes. From there, let's now look at the other side of the European model's long-range forecast. It's the seasonal model. Now, this is the one I'm going to give you a brand new update on in just a few moments. It's the one that goes month by month through the next 7 months. Again, for December, it was forecasting two regions to favor drier conditions. And we saw that, but it, like the weeklies, did not pick up on that December pattern that brought in this storm system and the big nor'easter. It's just not designed to do that. It also did quite well with the long-range temperature pattern, although it was a bit too warm in the western part of the United States. Now, we do this just so we understand moving forward maybe what the model biases are or what we should expect out of them. Because these are the brand new long-range updates for February, March, and April. On the left, I have precipitation, and on the right, I have temperature. Now, let's start temperature. Much of the above average temperatures, it appears, will be focused over the southwest. But I do believe that at times we will see some above average conditions across North Carolina as well. So maybe a more mild mid to end of winter. Now, that does not mean you won't get cold air outbreaks. That's going to happen. This is a 3-month average. In terms of precipitation, the models continue to want to keep everything south of that line I just drew there on the drier side of things. No strong subtropical jet stream really getting going here, so the storm track is cranking along the U.S.-Canadian border and here in the Ohio River Valley. So when I see that, that's consistent in the Europeans' forecast, which gets updated on the 5th of every month. But it's also consistent with other models. Now, this was brand new. This was just released at the end of last week. This is the February, March, and April outlook from the NMME. So these are run in the United States. it too, look, I can almost draw that same line. South of that line, it's favoring drier conditions with the warmest conditions over here from Texas back over to New Mexico and Arizona, getting into the lower Mississippi River Valley. But it does extend the warmer bias farther to the east than I think the European model did, or the southeast. But they both keep the cold air anchored in this area. So again, we just look at this for the longer term departures from normal. And I wanted to give you these updates as we get into this forecast video. Now, have you felt like you've been missing out on some sunshine, especially in the eastern half of the state of North Carolina? I'll tell you, I'm from Illinois, and I'm feeling it as well. Now, what are you looking at here? This map shows you for the last month what's called cumulative downward solar flux. In other words, these colors down here represent where we've seen less sunshine than normal getting to the surface. It's interesting because over toward the Appalachian Mountains, we've seen near average, or maybe even some places a little bit sunnier than average. But getting to the east, look at the cooler colors there representing less sunshine than we've normally seen. Now, what I'd like to do for you next is I want to talk to you about the way I expect the near-term forecast pattern to change. And to do that, we have to understand where it's been. So on the left, what we've got here is the upper level flow, the jet stream flow today. And there is that little system. It's hard to see down here, but that's in the lower Mississippi River. Well, it's really coming out of Texas toward the lower Mississippi River Valley. And as you can see, those winds are going to bring this over toward us here in the Carolinas throughout this week. I'll talk about that more in a few moments. There's also a little shortwave right here at the nose of this jet coming in that's going to produce a system at the end of the week that's going to go through this part of Canada, dip down into the Great Lakes, and then head off to the northeast. And that's going to give us another round of precip. But the bigger picture is this. The jet stream has been focused like that. And over there on the right, for the last month, that's where it's been. It's broken up across the U.S. and across Europe. Now, what's instructive about these maps is when you look at their anomalies, and that's what this is. The jet stream has been very strong here. It's split across the United States. In fact, it's been very weak over us. We've had this feature like this sitting over much of Europe, this trough feature here. Why? Because of a big ridge in the North Atlantic. Now, we have to see if any of this is going to change, but before I get there, I at least have to show you some interesting video from over the weekend. Because what we saw in the jet stream pattern where it dipped south like this over the last month around that cold air there in much of Asia, screaming across here in the North Pacific, breaking up over the United States, keeping things warm in the Canadian prairie and warm over Europe. Well, in Europe, things have changed, and that's what I want to tell you about from over the weekend. Because we've had some deep troughs cut through, big snows in Madrid, Spain. This guy's lifting some of the snow off of his car here, but it must have been too heavy to carry. And that picture by Scott Duncan on the right there showing you just how much snow has fallen in this historic event. Well, thinking about that, while we still have winter storm warnings down here across the south, I'll just tell you something about Europe. Big snow and very cold air is expected over the Black Sea region. And if it wasn't for that snow, we'd have some major problems. Where else do we have snow? Well, let's come back to the map you've been looking at here. We have what's left of this winter storm cutting through parts of Louisiana and the lower Mississippi River Valley. And it's right here on radar. Now we start to see this and we know, let's circle that in white, and we know that the subtropical jet streams come in this direction. The question is, how does that precipitation spread over toward us in the Carolinas? But before we get there, just step back and see how much snow we got out of the last system. So this one's been pretty potent, right? Came right through here, dropping quite a bit of snow, and we're still expecting more in this area. Our system that came through on Friday, well, we did have quite a few regions here in the Appalachian Mountains that picked up 4 to 8 plus inches of snow. But as it then spread out here, toward Raleigh, we did have a few places that picked up a couple of inches. But overall, it fizzled as it got here toward the Atlantic coastal plain. Just a few places grabbing maybe an inch of snow. So again, we come back to our question. What's happening with this next system? So let's take a look at it, and we're going to pause it early this morning. This was 4 a.m., about the time I was recording this, spreading this through the mid-morning. You do notice that possibly over in the Appalachian Mountains, mid-morning, some light snow. But the system is kind of undoing itself and weakening. And as a result, it's not going to be able to keep the coldest air on the backside. Plus, there's no big high to the north supplying that cold air. So throughout the day and into this evening, we're going to expect some chilly rain here, but I'm not expecting any snow out of this. As we work our way into the overnight hours, we have our second chance at rain coming in tomorrow morning. Now after that, I can just let this play on out because higher pressure does start to build in. And all the action is going to translate a bit farther to the north. And to show you that, let's switch over to the European model. So we've seen up till this point. Now as we go through the week, look at the pressure gradient setting up to your west. It's pretty far to your west out here in the Midwest. And a big low is building here in the northern plains. Scattered chance of some precip early on Thursday. But as we move toward the development of that low on Friday morning, watch the southern tail of that front move through us Friday night into Saturday morning there. So that's going to be our next chance at seeing some precipitation. And then that low moves on out. Got some cold air that's going to come in behind it. But other than that, not a whole lot in the way of production of precipitation working our way into early next week. So just to show you what this is going to look like, we see the first system spreading the precipitation through here, but generally less than a ½ inch of total accumulation. The second system there coming through over the weekend might bring those precipitation totals up a little bit more, and this goes out to 10 days, showing us that it might only be right here along the Atlantic coastal plain we're able to get more than a ½ inch of rainfall through this next week. So we would consider this drier than what we had been seeing up to this point. Now beyond that, let's take a look quickly at snow. Not expecting a lot here out of this next system, but some snow possible in the Appalachian Mountains through this next week. The blizzard's going to be here in the northern plains. Now, remember where we started this video? After I showed you the maps that kind of gave us an idea about the longer range forecast, I said pay attention to the change in the jet stream. Because by the 21st of January, now these winds are here. See that? Start from Africa, go to the Aleutian Islands, rather than starting here and coming all the way to this point. And now we start to see some much stronger jet stream level winds. Where are they? Right over the top of North Carolina. Going from day 10 all the way out to day 15, that's still there. Now remember why the jet stream is where it is. It's a boundary, and it's a boundary between cold air north and warm air south. And underneath it, that's where all the action is. So as we finish out the month of January, we have to understand that with the building of that ridge here and the jet stream coming around like that, it'll be the placement of this subtropical ridge. See it right here? I'll just circle it, keep circling it. That'll be critical to understand our temperature and precipitation patterns. But the jet stream in this area is going to be moving. So when we look out there into week 2, we can already start to see it taking shape. So remember, the ridge comes over here and the trough in this area. I think this is going to be an active corridor to finish out January in terms of storm systems. I'm going to show you that in a moment. First, temperatures. Cooler day today on Monday. And as the system approaches us, we have another relatively cooler one tomorrow on Tuesday. Okay. Going forward in this week, temperatures rebound for Wednesday, much more climatologically normal at this time. But look at the warmth in the northern plains. That's important to see. As we work our way to Thursday and Friday, we're going to be seeing near average to maybe a few degrees above average here to finish off the week. And that seems to want to carry a little bit here into the weekend. But I'm going to be watching Saturday for the front to swipe through, and then Sunday for the temperatures to go back over toward climatologically average for this time of year. Now from there, what about the day 5 through 10 pattern? So behind that front, GFS says, you know what, expect near average to cooler than average temperatures, and so does the European. But watch this. As we get out toward the end of the 3rd week of the month, starting the 4th week, the jet stream pattern makes that shift I told you about. And now there's a subtropical ridge here, and we favor the warmer conditions, but you know what happens. Right in between the two, that's where the jet stream is going to be screaming. So I'll show you these maps next. This is the end of the month, getting to the very beginning of February. We see a much more active pattern here from, well, lower Mississippi, River Valley, all the way through the mid-Atlantic. And those milder conditions are because of that ridge that's going to be established here with the troughs in this area, and we're tucked right in between the two. So I think we're going to go over to an active time period at the end of this month. Does that mean a lot of snow? No, not at this point. I'll be more concerned about the Appalachian Mountains, but I don't see any more systems in the near term, especially putting down snow like we saw on Friday. There's one last piece to this I want to talk about, and it's in South America. Big rains for Argentina this week. 2 separate lows swipe through there, bringing widely scattered storms and quite a bit of heavy rainfall with them. The Brazilian monsoon also returns over toward normal. Now going at this point forward, Brazil's northern growing areas and central growing areas I'm less concerned about. It's going to be Argentina that's going to be the focus throughout the month of February in terms of precipitation anomalies, because it's going to show up dry here as we finish out the end of January. And the question is, will February and March be unkind in terms of drought for Argentina? I think the market's going to watch that, especially for corn and soybeans, and we're going to keep a close eye on it. The rains that are coming in to this part of Brazil, just remember, this area right now has had its driest time period through the last 180 days in the last 40 years. So we're going to wait to see what some of these yields look like as harvest takes over in Brazil's central and northern growing areas for that first crop of beans. Okay, thank you so much for your attention today. Look forward to talking to you next Monday. Have a good one. Thank you.